Welcome to Allies or Enemies. I'm Jess.
And I am Shawn, and this is part 7 of our top 100 favorite all-time board game series. And today we are counting down the 30s.
And if you haven't yet, please subscribe, like, feel free to follow us on Instagram. All of that really helps our channel.
And let's just get into it. We're really into the nitty-gritty now, and we've been going back and forth, as we say at the beginning of all of these, but it is your turn to go first, so Jess is going to kick us off.
My number 40 is Takenoko. In Takenoko, you are placing these colorful tiles out to build a garden. The gardener is frantically going around trying to grow some bamboo. And then the panda is moving all about and eating all of that bamboo. And you have these goal cards that relate to each of those actions. So depending on the layout of the tiles or how tall each of those bamboo stalks are or what the panda has eaten, that's how you get your points. But it has this great look to it. The bamboo actually interlocks and can get pretty tall, and it really builds out, and it's adorable looking.
Yeah, it's really a great game to introduce people to board games too, because it's got so many mechanics kind of going on. It's got the tile placement, it's got action selection, it's got set collection, and it's just adorable. Like, it's an easy sell to folks who haven't played a lot of board games yet, because it's got pandas, and who doesn't like pandas?
Yeah, we got this quite early in our collection and still bring it out to play it, and I still really enjoy it. And that's my number 40.
My number 40 is Azul. And Azul, super simple tile placement game. It really is just a tile drafting where you're taking tiles from the middle, you're adding them to your sheet, and as you fill up like a row, you move them over to your scoring section, which is rows and columns. As you get more on those rows and columns, you score more points. That's basically it. It's very simple. So it's really easy to explain to folks because they've probably already played like a video game that plays like this. They've probably played a Tetris or Dr. Mario or Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine if they're cool. And they've already got a sense of it. Plus, it looks so nice. It's immediately interesting to people, and it looks great. And then it turns out it's fun.
Yeah. And the neat thing about it too is it has two sides to it. So it has the one side that you know where you have to put the tiles, but then the other side where it's just a free-for-all, and you really have to try and decide because the one color can't be in the same row or column, so it leads to some interesting decision-making.
Yeah, we do tend to use the already like mapped out for us side, but that's mostly just because I forget. I kind of want to play it now the other side. But that is my number 40.
My number 39 is another tile placement game, and this is Suburbia. In Suburbia, you are building out your own city. So you start with a park and with a residence and with a factory, and then you go and you buy tiles to add to your city, and each of the tiles interact in different ways with the surrounding tiles and other tiles in your city, and sometimes your opponent tiles. But I love games that you have something very different at the end that you've worked on building throughout the whole game. And this is very much that. It has some really fun tiles, particularly if you get the collector's editions. There's some great editions there. And just seeing how they combo together is a really fun challenge too.
Yeah, because you gotta kind of balance your population and your economy, because you've got these two tracks that if you go too far on one, it kind of pulls back the other. So you need this like even balance. And with this one, we don't usually do house rules, but there's a house rule, kind of a super popular one that we found on Board Game Geek, which is you've got 2 rows, 1 row of the base game tiles, 1 row of the all of the expansion tiles. And it's so much better because you see so many more of the tiles come out, and you get such different cities.
Yeah, I guess especially in 2-player, it just moves the tiles along a little bit more because of having all of those options, which really works well for this game. So that was my number 39.
My number 39 is Nemesis. And Nemesis it's a co-op game that is not officially, but definitely based on the Alien franchise. And it really has that theme to it, that kind of dark, kind of scary, in space feel. and you're moving around the ship, and you're flipping over tiles and finding out what rooms they are, and trying not to make noise, because the more noise you make, the more giant, terrifying aliens are going to come and try to eat you. And you don't have a lot to fight back against them. It can be tough depending on who you are, and it's just a great co-op game, and it does have the option of you can be co-op or you can be semi-co-op, where someone might be a traitor. But I really like that you don't have to play traitor. I'm not a huge fan of traitor mechanics in general, and we prefer just playing co-op, but we can, if we want, we can sneak those cards in there, so it's possible.
Yeah, it is a really fun co-op, but it is funny because usually you do have a very similar goal, but specific things you have to do. And one time, you did pick a slightly different goal of having us go to Mars, and I had to have us go to Earth. So we won, but technically only you won. Mm-hmm. But I was okay with that because the ship was filled with aliens. So it would have been really irresponsible for us to have gone to Earth.
She was not okay with that. I heard about it. I heard it. We played it again yesterday. We hadn't played it for like a month, and she was like, "Oh, are you going to Earth this time, or are you taking us to Mars again?" So that is a lie. She was not okay with it. But it really is a great game, and that is my 39.
38.
My number 38 is Scythe. Scythe has this really great look to it. The art on this is fantastic. It's this alternative history in Europe with these different factions that are vying for control. It looks like it might be more of an area control combat game, but it isn't really. It's more of a resource management game. On your turn, you select which action you want to do, and you can always do the top, and if you have the resources, you can do the bottom as well. And so you're trying to set it up where you can have as many kind of turns as possible to do both actions at once. And when you manage that, it's really satisfying, and you can get a lot done really quickly.
And it does look terrific. Like, I love that one of the rules, it says in the rule book that with the event cards, you're supposed to show it to the other players first, and then you're supposed to do the thing, just so everyone can enjoy the artwork on it. And the artwork it's great. And the factions play surprisingly different too.
Yeah, and the different boards as well. There's just so much variability and replayability in this game. And that was my number 38.
My number 38 is a game that I am particularly up and down at. It's like when I do well, I do pretty well. Actually, I'm down in middle at. When I do well, I just win. When I lose monumentally. This is Underwater Cities. And Underwater Cities is... it's a really cool looking game because you're building an underwater city. You're like at the bottom of the sea. You're adding these cool domes and you're adding your different resources to it. So then they make that resource, and it is a mixed resource management, worker placement, also card tableau game. This is a real mishmash of stuff. Because each turn, you've got 3 workers, kind of, that you can put down on the different action spaces. When you put down your worker, you're also playing a card from your hand. If the card matches the color of the space that you put it on, then you do both things. And there's a lot to think about. But I really like it. I really like the challenge of this game. And it does look cool. The domes are really cool.
Yeah, it is interesting of that decision of, I really, really wanted to do this action, but I don't have the matching card. Mm-hmm. Do I give up on it and do this other action, which isn't as good, but lets me play this card? So really tough decisions. And then your city also produces a few times throughout the game. So you need to try and build that up with what resources you might want or need in the future so that you get those later as well.
Yeah, and it's a good one, and hopefully I remember how to play it and get better at it again. That is my 38.
37.
My number 37 is a tableau builder. It's Unfair, and so you are building a theme park using cards, and it has some really great themes to it. The base game has like pirates and jungle and a few other great
robots,
ones.
ninjas, gangsters, and one other one, vampires.
And they all play really differently and have different types of cards, but we love theme parks, so it is really fun to build your coasters and build your leisure rides and build this all out. It is called Unfair, but we only play where we're not mean to each other. because I wouldn't like it if I built this beautiful park and then you came along and destroyed it. I'm more okay if like the game tells me to close something. So if you're worried about it being mean, you can just not play meanly, and it works really, really well.
Yeah, I think we played our first game we played our first game with everything, playing it mean. And then that was that. And we stopped playing like that, because there are a bunch of cards in it that give you kind of alternate rules. And that's one of the rules, is just you can't play any cards that hurt the other person. And I still prefer this because they made another version called Funfair that's meant to be kind of the nice version. But the nice thing about Unfair is you've got all the different themes, and you've got the expansion themes that you can put on top of those themes, and a lot of the fun comes in the mix and match.
Yeah, exactly. And with that one change, it makes all the difference, and it's a really fun game to play, and you've got this awesome theme park at the end with some really good combos sometime depending on what you put out. And so that's my number 37.
My number 37 is Parks, and first thing anyone's going to tell you about Parks is that it is beautiful, and that is because it is. It really is a gorgeous game. All the pieces are lovely. Even the tray is lovely. It goes away so nicely. The resources are made out of this just wonderful to touch wood. The artwork's all based on this artwork that was commissioned for the national parks in the US, and it's just wonderful to look at. But the game is actually really good. And it is simple, and it is chill, but at the same time, it's not as chill as you think. So the game's basically just, you've got a hiking trail. Each spot on that trail is like a different kind of worker placement space. You can move your worker as far as you want down that trail, and wherever you land, take that resource or you take that action. But you can't ever move backwards. It's a one-way trail. So you got to keep moving down to the end, and when you get to the end, everyone has to go to the end. So it's kind of you're kind of pacing each other, which makes for a really interesting push-pull of a game.
Yeah, and you get points for all the national parks that you visit, so you're collecting these beautiful cards, and you also get points for snapshots. So there's only one camera, and it's always this constant battle about who is holding the camera to be able to take these snapshots, which are all little cardboards with little beautiful designs on them too.
But that is my 37.
My 36 is Fields of Arle. This is an Uwe Rosenberg game. So in this game, you are farming, and you are having to feed your people, and there are animal meeples, but it works really well. This is a 2-player only game, and we only play at 2, so that works great for us. And this is peat farming, so you're trying to clear off all the peat off your farm to free up these tiles. But it feels like there's a lot of options. Every game I try and do a different route to see which one works best, and different buildings come out each time as well, so that might change my strategy. And the animal meeples are fantastic because the cows have these stickers on them, so they all look a bit different with their spots. So it just has a really good look to it, and it plays over 9 rounds, and there's a lot to do, and the feeding isn't as strict as it is in some of his other games, which is nice. It's not the main focus of the game.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite Uwe Rosenberg games, and I think one of the reasons is that the feeding is not nearly as punishing, which is good. So it feels more like everything that you're doing is positive. And there are a lot of different paths. Jess has tried all of them, and she has beaten me still every single time we have played with a different strategy every single time. And I feel like I'm always doing collecting animals, and I feel like it's the way to go. I just haven't nailed it yet, but next time. But I really do like this game, and it's so good at 2, and there's so much. Usually when you think a 2-player game, you think it's going to be a bit pared down, and usually that's the case, but this is a 2-player table hog of a game.
Yeah, you couldn't fit anything more in. So that was my number 36.
My number 36 is Tapestry. And Tapestry it's kind of a Civ game. It is, but just in a really different way. In it, you've got 4 different tracks, kind of technology tracks, and they are like exploration, military, science, and technology. And each turn, you're choosing one of those tracks to move down. And it's really like a comboing game because you're trying to figure out if I move down this track, then that can help me move down this track, which can move down this. And so you're kind of balancing it out and choosing which one you want to focus on as well, because you're never going to get down all four. But it's different from any other game that I've played because there's also like a bit of an area control mini game in the middle going on. There's also a bit of a tile placement game that you're doing with buildings. There's also this thing where you're moving buildings off. Like, there's a lot of bits, and at the same time there's these asymmetrical factions. And this is the part that gets a little tricky because they are not balanced. And there are balance fixes in the books, but they feel a little weird. But we find that that's fine. Like, we just have fun, I think, playing it anyway. And then because we play it so much, we kind of look back, oh, how did you do with that faction?
We have this whole score sheet where we keep track of which faction we were and which faction we were playing against and what the scores were. So there is a little bit of just that comparison. How did you do with this faction? Can you get one of those really, really high kind of 300-point scores?
And because there's not that much interaction anyway, it kind of feels like you're playing against yourself. But it's great for that. But that is my 36.
35.
My number 35 is Quacks of Quedlinburg. This is a really silly push your luck game. And during this, you are these old-timey quacks that are building a concoction. And you reach your hands into your bags and you pull out these ingredients and you put them on your pot. But if you get to 7 or more, well, more than 7 cherry bombs, then your pot explodes. So it is quite the challenge of deciding when to move on, when to stop, because the further you go, the more money you have to buy new ingredients. And so you want a lot of that to get the better ingredients that you can add in. And you're really hoping that you can keep going further than your opponent or your opponents, depending on how many you're playing against. And hope that you don't explode. And so I really like this game.
There is obviously some luck in it still because, sometimes you're like your first 7, it feels like your first 7 are cherry bombs. And sometimes you can just do no wrong and you're totally flying free the whole game. There is more skill to it, kind of, in like what ingredients do you buy, and in the words of Kenny Roger, knowing when to hold them and when to fold them.
Yeah.
But it just is fun pushing it and blowing up or pushing it and like, ooh, I did it. Like, I know I've got a 1 in 3 chance, but I'm gonna go for it.
Yeah, and there are a lot of different ways you can play as well, because there's the other side of the board, and then each of the ingredients come with like 4 different cards, so you can pick which one you want to do. So there is just a lot of replayability and just the feeling of wanting to do better next time. So that was my number 35.
My number 35 is The Dwellings of Eldervale. It's a mishmash of kind of everything, but it's like the most streamlined mishmash that I know of, because there's tile placement as you're building out a board, there's area control as you're kind of competing for spaces on that board, there's worker placement, there's resource management, there's cards, you're building a tableau of cards, you've got magic cards that are sending you on quests, you've got so many different things happening, but within that it all really makes sense, and all of those things are tied together really well, and the asymmetry is really nice because it's just a few little tweaks, but they're all meaningful and they all look great.
It is really great. It looks really good, and there's so much happening. But after a couple of games, we didn't have to look up too many things because it's streamlined. It works really well. And one of the fun parts about it is your workers turn into dwellings by adding these like little house roofs to it. So you actually like put it on the head, which is fantastic. And I love doing that so much that I usually end up with like all like 2 workers that are dwellings and only 1 worker left. And I think, oh no, I shouldn't have done that so early.
Yeah, it's actually what sold me on the game. I heard about this game and I was like, oh, it's getting like a lot of people are talking about it. I want to look into it, and I was like, oh, I don't know. And then I saw the house hats, and I was like, well, we got to get this. And it is a really good game, and that is my 35.
My number 34 is Orleans. My last one was a bag builder, and this one is as well, but this is all strategy basically. For each of your chits that you're drawing out of your bag are different types of villagers. And so you draw your workers out and then you put them on your board, and different combinations of different types of workers let you do the actions. So some of your actions will be recruiting other villagers that you can put in your bag. Other ones are being able to walk around the map and put buildings down and get resources. So there's a lot of different things that you're trying to do and different tracks that you're trying to go up. But it's really tough strategy if you don't get the workers that you want now, how you might put them aside for the following turn. And I love the decision making for this one.
Well, snap, because this is only the third time I think that we've had the same game, same spot. Also, my 34 is Orleans. It's exactly what you say. It's the more complex level of bag building. And you really are kind of building that system. It's almost like a resource kind of where you're pulling out the guys and you want to be able to continue down the paths that you've chosen. So you're kind of focusing on certain things usually. But the great thing is we got the expansion for this one too. And also you'll see in the photos we bought little like capsules to put the things in because we like how they jingle in the bag. We did the same thing for Quacks. I highly recommend it. Honestly, it's so satisfying. But we bought the expansion that lets you do it co-op as well, and the co-op is really fun and really challenging. It took us like 5-6 times to beat it.
Yeah.
We maybe could have done it in 2, but I 100% forgot what I was supposed to be doing because you've got like a personal goal and then a shared goal. And we're like, oh, we win. And then I looked and, oh, we don't win. I didn't do any of my things. Jess was not thrilled about that, but we did it in the long run. And it does introduce all these different ways to play, but even just the base always does feel a little bit different because the different paths that you take. And I'm excited actually to try some of the other game modes in that expansion too. And that is my 34.
My number 33 we've also spoken about already on this list, and that is Tapestry. Tapestry, like everything you said, it is a civilization game, but it is that fun challenge of how long you can stretch your turns out based on the resource that you have and the tracks that you're going down. I think this works particularly well at 2 players, and part of that is there's the race to the landmarks. And with 2, you're able just to collect more landmarks, to fill your city spaces more, to get more resources. And so again, it just lets you do more and probably go down the tracks a little bit more as a result of that too.
And turns can be because this is so like multiplayer solitaire really, and turns can get quite long as you're comboing. So I think with 4 I would probably get a little bit bored.
But one of our subscribers on another one of our lists said this is one of their favorite games because it has that slow build up where you can't do a lot at the beginning, but as you move along you can do more and more, and I totally agree with that. And that's why it's my number 33.
My number 33 is actually the same designer as your last game, and this is Euphoria. And Euphoria, I think, is a really underrated gem, and I kind of get why that is because the expansion fixes basically all of the problems of the base game. But the expansion came out years later, so a lot of folks played the base game and thought, man, it's okay. But if they started with the expansion, I think they would be a lot more on board with this game. And what it is, it's a dice placement game. So you're putting out your dice workers, and they get kind of gradually smarter as they go, and they also get better at their jobs, but they're living in this dystopian society. And the board's actually really cool how it's set up because there's 4 different sections to the civilization. And so you can kind of feel the story of the game from that and from like the fun character cards and the names of the markets, and there's a lot of really great little touches within the game, but just the mechanics themselves, really sleek, really simple. That expansion, it adds AI, it really tightens up everything, and it makes it far better for 2 players.
Yes, and the two-player thing is interesting because this game really works well with interaction. So every time we play, we add in 2 AI because of that. And when you place your worker, it's the collective number of all the workers that determine how many of what kind of resource you get. So having more dice there influences that. And there's also the, if a dice goes on the tunnel spot, it bumps you. So you might be able to get a dice back, so you get another turn. And the markets require 2 dice, so you might be able to do both of those, but often someone else will sneak in and do it as well. So all of that interaction works really well.
But that is my 33.
32.
My number 32 is cartographers. In cartographers, you are a cartographer and you've got your blank map that you're filling in. So each time there's a card that flips and you choose one of the terrains that are available on that card. So it might be a village or water or fields, and you draw that in on your sheet. And at some point there might be goblins that come and attack, and you swap sheets and try and sabotage the other player. But what's really interesting for this is it's one card that shows up, and then you all have the same shared goals that you're scoring at the end of each of the seasons. But given that, our sheets always look so different.
Yeah, it's crazy how different they look. Because really, if you were like optimal game playing robots, like if we were both like Data from Star Trek, we would have the exact same sheet. But you make one different choice, and everything is different. And it's also different because we draw them so different, because we always use pencil crayon. And so it's got kind of your little personal flair to it, but also like your choices in it. It's really interesting that just one little choice affects everything so much every game.
Yeah, this would be one too I'd be happy to bring out with people who are relatively new to gaming, because it'd be something they'd be easy to pick up on and just have a fun time coloring things in. So that was my number 32.
My number 32 is Hadara, and Hadara is a game that I feel like I'm always telling people about. It's basically, you've got 5 different kinds of cards. You've got yellow cards that are your economy, then you've got red that are military, blue is culture, green is agriculture, and purple is purple. And it's like a card collection, so you're drafting cards from the middle, and then you're adding cards to your tableau, and as you get cards, you can get other cards for cheap. But it's just such a fun like collection game. It's such a fun engine to build, and it's got that like that splendory thing where they get cheaper and cheaper as you go. And I can just play it and play it and play it, and it's so bright and vibrant. It's just a great game.
Yeah, I really like the card drafting as well, because no matter when you're doing, you always have a choice of at least 2 cards that you're drafting. And so it's such a tough decision as to whether you pay your money because it's always in limited supply, take that card or save it for another one, or if you want a card but you don't really want to leave it in the pile for your opponent to take, you might then use your turn to discard that one instead. So that adds a whole another bit to it.
And so that is my 32.
31.
My 31 is Isle of Cats. And the premise of Isle of Cats is amazing. It's evil pirate Vesh is coming to this island, I think to like set fire to it.
Yeah, it's an island entirely of cats. It's just a cat island that they've, I don't know, taken over this island. And he's, I think, yeah, he's just coming to like kill them. He's coming to kill all the cats, I think.
So your goal is to rescue the cats off of this island. And you do this by each round, you start by drafting cards. And the cards give you the fish in the baskets that you need to entice the cats to your boat to help save them. As well as what's interesting about it is the private lesson cards or public lessons, because those are your goal cards and how you score your points. So you've got to decide which cards you want to draft, and then you rescue your cats, and you can never rescue them all. And I'm always like a bit sad for the cats that I don't rescue.
It's because they're cats and they don't want to be rescued. Like, even how you rescue them is to trick them to get into baskets, and then I guess just like shut the basket quick and put them on their boat, even though it's for their own good.
Yeah, but then once you've got your cats, it's a fun tile lane puzzle of trying to set up your cats, because they all have to be touching each other, and the different cat colors like being with each other, and then the goals that you get might change what kind of cats you want to rescue as well. So it's a really fun game. And so that's my number 31.
My number 31, and I feel like I've had a lot of beautiful games in this section. I feel like I've been saying that a lot, and that's not the only kind of game that I like. But this is probably the prettiest of all of these pretty games. My number 31 is Tang Garden. And Tang Garden is really at its core fairly simple-ish tile placement game. Each turn, you're just making the choice of either putting out a tile to build this garden in the middle, or getting a decoration that you're going to put on top of one of those tiles. Or at least getting cards that hopefully will be a decoration you can put on top of these tiles. But there is kind of surprising interaction within that, because you want to move up your 3 tracks for water and grass and rocks, which is done by putting tiles next to like tiles. But because you're doing that, when you're choosing tiles from one of the 4 stacks, you're also paying attention to what you're leaving your opponents to try to make it so that they can't match up things and move up their tracks. Because as you move up the tracks, you get these great characters that you put out, and you're just trying to put them somewhere that they're going to enjoy the view of it. So it's this really kind of gentle theme.
Yeah, it starts off with no color but the line, so it feels a little bit like a coloring book, and then you're adding the color to it as you go. But there is certainly the keeping an eye on your opponent, because you could also do these landscapes that the characters are looking at, and certain characters prefer certain types of landscapes, and so you take a look at what your opponent wants and you try and spread those out, and there is a lot of that, and trying to mitigate that and maximize what you're getting and interfere a little bit with what your opponent's doing.
It does have like a nice little extra level to it, and the production is, maybe it's over the top, but I love it. And that is my 31. And that is it. That brings us to the end of the 30s, and we are really getting to it now. There's just a few videos left. We're getting to the 20s next time. Very exciting stuff.
I know I said this at the beginning, but please do like and subscribe, leave a comment. All of that is really helpful, and hopefully we'll see you for the next one.